This recording, called Dealing with Negative Thinking, has been put together for people who want to understand more about that topic. It lasts around 13 minutes and runs through some simple techniques for managing negative thoughts. It's a good idea to listen to the recording several times to master the material covered. We recommend that you find a quiet time to give this your full attention. Every person has negative thoughts, so try not to be hard on yourself for having them. They're often automatic. We can't turn them on or off. They just happen. The purpose of this recording is to help you reduce the impact of negative thoughts and learn skills to help you to become a more balanced thinker. Why is this so important? Well, it's because the way that we think has a strong influence on how we feel and behave. For example, a woman is due to return to work after a lengthy period of time off. Her negative thought is, everybody will be staring at me because I've let them all down. This thought makes her feel nervous and on edge. Her body is tense too, and in the end she decides to cancel at the last minute. It's a quick fix because her nerves improve to begin with, but it causes more problems in the longer term. Sadly, she ends up being more convinced than ever that she's let them down. Negative thinking has been a strong influence on her mood and behaviour. Psychological therapy techniques that work often look to change the way we think. Notice how I earlier used the phrase balanced thinker. Well, some people say things like, you've got to be positive. If you're positive, you can achieve anything. This kind of advice is well-meaning, but actually quite unhelpful. There are, of course, situations where just trying to think of something positive misses the point and seems shallow. If you achieve balance in your thinking, however, weighing up the situation realistically, it will be more believable to you. When that happens, you will feel your mood improve, and this will help you cope. Okay, remember these initials, AHA. This stands for the 3 ways in which we are going to help you challenge and deal with your negative thinking. A is for accuracy, H is for helpfulness, and the second A is for alternatives. First off, accuracy, possibly the most effective way to beat your negative thinking, and I'll now explain more. The next time you notice a negative thought, you need to not let it run away with you. Write it down and begin by asking yourself challenge number 1. Is the thought accurate? I'd like you to think about a courtroom situation with the defence and prosecution, who give evidence for and against the negative thought, and a judge who decides which side wins. Like a real court, you need hard evidence. It's not enough to just say, well, I just feel like I've let everyone down, because this type of evidence doesn't stand up in court. Let's use another example to work with and learn from. A man is thinking, I always make bad decisions these days. And as a result, he's feeling very low and can't seem to find any motivation to get up and on with his day. So, is the thought accurate? What's the evidence for it? He tries to write down an example, but it's difficult to find anything factual, and he notices a lot of the so-called evidence is not going to stand up in court. Remember, facts count, nothing else, just like in court. Let go of the it just feels like type of evidence, and instead try and reason with your head, not your heart. So the man has noted down the only factual example he can remember, when he recently made a mistake in buying something from the internet that turned out to be a hoax. Next, what's the evidence against the thought that he makes bad decisions? With a bit of time, he's able to recall several recent decisions he took that were not bad, such as remembering to call to pay his credit card bill on time, eating a fairly balanced diet, and planning to improve his house's energy efficiency by insulating his loft. Next, the man looks at the balance of evidence like a judge does, and actually the thought, "I always make bad decisions these days," is not accurate. Having written things down so that he is looking at the actual evidence rather than relying on his memory, the balanced thought is believable to him. It makes him feel better and ready to get on and start his day. Once you find a more balanced thought, like this man did, write it down on a card and place it somewhere that you will see regularly. Practice using the courtroom to help identify inaccurate negative thoughts. It will become second nature if you keep practicing looking for factual evidence for and against the negative thought, and then being a fair and balanced judge. Do you remember I said AHA? Well, A is for accuracy, and we've just looked at that. So now we're going to move on to H, which stands for helpfulness. If you've tried to challenge the accuracy of the thought and not managed to beat it, or you believe it is actually accurate, then ask yourself challenge number 2. Is it helpful to think like this? Often the answer is a straightforward no. Imagine you have a job interview and you have a negative thought, "I hate interviews, I get so nervous." If this is factually accurate, then it probably won't be convincing enough to you to just try and be positive. But how is it helpful to focus on these thoughts? It's not. Try and move beyond these thoughts and then refocus on the present. Sometimes imagining just clearing the thought to the side, like drawing a curtain, helps. In a different way, there can be something helpful about a negative thought that's accurate. Sometimes we need to face up to certain things about ourselves. Consider the situation that somebody volunteers to take on another troublesome task at work on top of their normal workload, but goes on to find it too difficult to achieve. He or she might well have strong negative thoughts that actually are accurate, like, "I can't do this," or "I probably shouldn't have agreed to this." Whilst these negative thoughts do not help to complete the task, there could be a benefit in this person accepting some limitations. Maybe they regularly say yes to requests before really thinking it through. In this way, having a negative but accurate thought has been helpful. In this case, he or she learns to accept that they have taken on too much. They admit this to themselves and their work colleagues to resolve the immediate situation. For the future, he or she has also learned to take time to reflect on situations fully before agreeing to requests. Using the simple phrase, "I'd like a bit of time to think that through, I'll get back to you," is a step of progress in this person's life. In summary then, recognizing when you have had an accurate negative thought can provide an opportunity to learn about yourself and to benefit you in future situations. Okay, let's come back to AHA. The last A stands for alternatives. There is always a different way of interpreting the same situation. Stand back from it and ask yourself challenge number 3. What other explanations might there be here? We sometimes get boxed in by our negative thoughts and our own hang-ups, like taking everything too personally or being unable to size up how significant something is. For example, a man is driving along and he sees another driver edging out into the road. Our man does not let him out, and the other driver seems very annoyed, drawing attention to the situation by sounding his horn and shouting out of the window. Our man's negative thought is, why does everything bad always seem to happen to me? And this makes him feel sad, and it weighs on his mind. When he got home, what helped him to deal with his negative thoughts was to try and think of and write down alternative explanations for the other driver's reaction. It takes time to come up with these. It's not easy. But as we'll see, it's worthwhile. He comes up with several alternatives. Perhaps the other driver had been there a long time and was late for something important. Perhaps it was not only him that the other driver was cross with. Perhaps it's right to be upset that the other driver was so rude. And perhaps to edge out into the road like that is unsafe driving. Taking these 4 alternatives, a technique that can help is to divide up a circle to represent how likely each one is, the same as doing a pie chart. Using the example I have just given to you, the man decides that the most realistic conclusion is number 3, that regardless of why it happened, it's right to feel upset that the other driver was so rude. So he makes this half of his circle or pie, 50%. Taking the other 3 alternatives, plus his original negative thought that everything bad always seems to happen to me, he considers how to divide up the other half of the circle. As he looks at the completed circle, it shows that his original negative thought rationally only makes up 10% of the overall explanation, and that feels a lot better to him. This visual aid can help you to size things up appropriately in your mind and remind you that there are always different ways of interpreting the same situation. As a tip, when you're trying to think of alternatives, it's normally helpful to ask yourself, what would I say to a best friend about this if they brought the same situation to me and wanted help? We are often able to be more creative and compassionate towards others we care about than ourselves. So in conclusion, everyone has negative thoughts and they have a strong influence on how we feel and behave. Start to notice your negative thoughts and write them down. Challenge them using the courtroom to check the thought's accuracy by looking at the factual evidence for and against it. Also consider whether it's helpful to think in this way and whether you might have to face up to certain limitations. Also, think of alternative explanations for the same situation. Often there's a less distressing and more convincing one there. We recommend that you listen back to this recording until you've mastered the techniques described.